Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the sports betting show hosted by a real statistics professor. This is college football week 2. Because you can see there the week 1 recap. Week 1 went very well for us. It started off a little slow between the weekday games and the early Saturday games, and then we came through and finished strong. And I put the last year stuff there just to remind anybody new. This isn't really a surprise to us. This is exactly what happened last year. The reason you only see totals and sides over here, though, last year we didn't quite grade things the same way, so we only had A-grade sides and recommended totals. That's the closest analog. But, I mean, we're doing great so far in week 1. We have a long way to go, but last year was great. So far, starting off great, so there's a lot of reason to listen to this. What's apparently now just a 2-hour show on college football. Covering 20 games because, we deep dive it here. Recapping that, of course, and things went well. We won some, we lost some. We talk about that every week, right? We're not going to go perfect. We're not trying to go perfect. What we're trying to do is find prices and numbers such that we win more when we win than we lose when we lose. And that's what we do here with college football, what we've done with NFL, what we've done with baseball, just year after year, it seems like. But real quick, before we get into anything else, what do you want to what's on your mind from week 1? I mean, me personally, it's because we're recording this on Monday night. We're watching Florida State. I mean, that's on my mind. Like, that team might be just truly terrible. We took them. That's a loser. That's already in the notes there. Kind of thought maybe buy low, that they can't be that bad. But, I mean, they look really bad. The model's not going to be very kind to them going forward with this performance. That's obviously the first thing on my mind. What's on your mind?
So you really hamstrung me here because you said we could only, really want to talk about the big games. So the big teams. So just a few of them running through what we had. Wisconsin struggling with Western Michigan at home on a weeknight. I was very surprised by that. I thought that, and not necessarily because I thought Wisconsin was going to be a great team, but just Western Michigan is not that great. And so I figured they would be able to handle them pretty well at home.
I am curious, and we talked about it last week, the progression that Van Dyke makes as the season goes along, as he gets more familiar with that scheme. Will their offense get better or not? I don't know. It's a fascinating question to see, but it did look great in week 1. Maybe it'll come around as we get closer to conference play. I don't know.
Yep. The other thing was Vanderbilt, our boy Diego Pavia. The guy is just a winner. I don't know what to say other than that. I think that is the best thing that you can ask of your quarterback, obviously. Nebraska showing a pulse on offense, even with the constraints that is a Matt Rule offense. I think that bodes well.
We still got the under, thankfully, barely held on to it by the hair of our chin.
By the skin of our teeth. And of course, both defenses in the LSU USC game, I think both offenses will be fine, but what I saw from both defenses, I was pretty impressed with.
That one, I think, and we didn't nail everything, obviously, again, but we did nail that one for sure, where we were both like, hey, these offenses aren't going to be as good as last year. The defenses are going to be a little bit better, and that's exactly what we saw.
And the defenses couldn't be worse, especially USC's. Like,
not for how much talent they bring in every year.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm just like every other USC fan. The entire night, all I was thinking was, wow, we really wasted 2 years of Caleb Williams by not, still having Alex Grinch as the defense coordinator there the past 2 years. So, man, wish that they could have gotten him some help a little sooner, because that USC team, I think, would have been a lot of fun with a competent defense.
And Miller Moss looks great. I think someone on Twitter posted all the defenses he has to face this year. So it's going to be a long road ahead for that USC offense, because they're going to face a lot of really good defenses. But he looked really good. Of course, Clemson looking like still stuck in backwards. Georgia looking good. I still think Georgia's defense has some weaknesses. They haven't been as strong here recently as they were a few years ago, but that offense, we talked about, Georgia's offense is really, really good. And you saw that really in the second half against a good Clemson defense, just ripping the cover off the ball is the baseball equivalent to it. So they're going to be obviously a force to be reckoned with. Miami, Cam Ward, we talked about Cristobal and everything, but maybe Cam Ward's good enough that he's going to be able to overcome that. I mean, we know they have all the talent in the world. Can they put it together? And week 1 was great. How much of that was also Florida? We talked about, just kind of being an up and down, we don't really know team. So, some more questions coming out of that than answers, I think. We talked about UCLA may not be very good. I think that's definitely holding true. Of course, your Aggies against Notre Dame, the model like Notre Dame, we were both a little bit like, I don't know. That's a tougher one. I think there were questions about both teams going in based off of some of the turnover. What was your takeaway of that? Obviously, I'm sure you were,
Yeah. My takeaway from that was, first of all, a little bit of a lighter note. I don't know if I've ever watched a game in person where I felt like I was just watching two of the exact same team on the field. I mean, those two teams seemed like almost carbon copies of each other. And of course, the one that came out on top was the one whose quarterback made a couple more plays and made a couple less mistakes. I think it was about the middle of the second quarter. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, why did we not take plus odds on a 50-50 game? I feel like that is our bread and butter across all sports. And for some reason, we tried to outsmart ourselves.
I think it was just, and there's a lot of games this week where I have the same thing where I look at it, I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like I know enough yet about these teams to really to put my money on it and tell other people to put their money on it, that sort of thing. And you're right. It was right there for us. So we just overthought it, I think, or underthought it. I don't know.
And I would say that is one area that Sideline excels is, those toss-up games, and you just need to grab the plus odds. So we are definitely here to guide you, but sometimes you just kind of got to listen to what Sideline's saying, and sometimes you might be able to interpret that and kind of stick to those guidelines, I guess, better than we can at times.
I always tell people sometimes, y'all can be smarter than I am. I'm just here to do the math and provide the information. And if y'all can do better, I love it. That's great. That's really all that matters here for me is y'all excelling. As you can see on screen, things have been going really well. You should join the Dub Club. A couple things. Don't just fast forward yet. Obviously, if you haven't been here, just a quick 12-second pitch, right? Discord details, projections, all sorts of goodies. I've spent a lot of time trying to make sure it's displayable, readable, that it's all clear. We have now added, folks, a brand new, if you only like football only package where you just get college football and the NFL. And we've got a bunch of specials right now. So just want to make sure you catch this. If you're a weekly type of person, the prices are there listed for the weekly monthly package. The trial is turned back on for everybody. If you go there, if you click that QR code from the screen before or the link in the show description, the trial is there so you can just try it out if you want. We also have 3-month, 6-month, and 1-year packages that can drop the average price down to up to $15 a month. About $20 a month is what you pay if you get on that year package. You can get some really good discounts if you're interested. But if you want the football only package, if you use the promo code football on that, it will be $99.99 for your first year. Folks, we've shown here that we can help make you some money, so you'll be able to recoup that. You do get Discord access. You only get access to the football specific channels, but you get a lot of benefits on that football only package if you're only a football person. I know we have some people who just do for the college basketball. We do that in the winter, or they just do baseball. I know some people who just do football. There's a football only package, a little bit cheaper if you're interested in that. So check that out. Quick reminders, this is a player-based model, so ratings reflect the current roster, injuries, who's starting, etc. The average grade's 100 higher implies more points, so defenses want to be lower, offenses higher. We are projecting average games. One game we don't know. We can't project. We cannot see the future. We base everything off probabilities. That means 55% winners will lose 9 out of 20 times. We are going to lose a lot of picks, but as I said at the start of the show, we should win more when we win than we lose when we lose on average. Doesn't mean every week is profitable, but in the long term, we've done a good job of showing that. It tells us that anything is a good bet at the right price or number. Doesn't mean you'll ever find it. It just means we have to know what we're looking for. That's what we talk about on this show. And that information is available for every game on Dub Club, for every sport, what you are looking for. So we provide that information. The model will give the A, B, or C, love, like, or lean. We add the plus if we like it. Let's get to it. BYU and SMU. We've got 2 games here Friday night that are FBS. We're going to cover both of them here for you. SMU is a big favorite here. They're favored by 11. Sideline thinks they should be favored by even more, by 23. SMU didn't look great in the first game. I also think they didn't look maybe as bad as the score would indicate. That was kind of a weird, fluky, I don't really know what was happening type thing in that opening week. The model's not really deterred. Sometimes that works out really well. Sometimes it doesn't. In the case of Florida State, it looks like it's not working out really well. the model is built to react appropriately. And in some cases, it should react faster, and in some, it should react slower. It's built to kind of split that difference so that on average, it's doing a good job. That's what we talk about. Our strength is in a little bit of a larger sample size. We're not a bet 2 games a weekend kind of thing. It's bet 15, 20, 25. It's a decent number of bets. But the more that we're betting, we can help overcome that variance, and we can show a profit in the model saying SMU will be just fine. BYU is just average. We've got SMU by 23, so we're going to lay the 11 A grade pick according to the model. Because Jared, why do you like this one to start off our weekend of college football betting?
I think that you hit on something there. A lot of these teams, you've only have 1 game of data, but SMU, you have 2. And same thing with Florida State. You mentioned that Sideline is going to be penalizing Florida State for how they have played in these first 2 games. But it's looking at SMU, and it's not really giving them that same penalty. So that's something that certainly appeals to me. The other thing with BYU, they won last week against like Southern Illinois. They looked fine, as you would hope a team would against a FCS opponent. When I think of, the first thing when I think of BYU is I am much more hesitant to fade BYU at home than on the road. So like that I'm getting I'm getting SMU at home here. I like the wake up call SMU got in week 0 against Nevada. I think that's always good early in the season. And I also look at the quarterback matchup here, and Preston Stone is just in a different world than anybody that BYU is going to throw out there at quarterback. And going up against a BYU defense, I don't know about y'all, but just when I think about BYU every year, you have this idea of, well, they're probably going to run the ball and play decent defense, but that's not necessarily the case, especially relative to the Big 12 competition. BYU, not the best defense on the field. So I just think SMU is better all the way around. A weeknight game at home, much better quarterback. When Sideline goes out on a limb like this, I feel like, especially early in the season, we need to take advantage of this. And so this is me kind of putting my faith in Sideline in an area that I like a lot of the other matchups I see. So I'm good with laying the 11 with SMU.
And, of course, I think we talked a little bit last week. SMU, they only punted 3 times in that game against Nevada. Like, that's usually something to look at. Like, if your punter's always out there in a close game, it just means your offense can't get going. Like, that was just kind of some weird things. It's not to say that it's not a concern. It's just not maybe a big concern at this point. If they lose this game, it will be a big concern. But we still have some faith in SMU, so we're going to lay the points with them there. Preston Stone, according to Sideline, a top 10 quarterback in college football. I think it's a little bit of a weaker class, at least to start with. There's some guys who might be good, but they've had a hard time staying healthy, or some, the Rayola, like at Nebraska, that's things that might come up and eventually challenge. But right now, it's not exactly clear that there's a lot of great quarterbacks. Cam Rising, right? Can he get healthy and become his own self? So there's a lot of question marks out there. But at least for right now, the model is a lot of faith in Preston Stone. The other Friday night game, a late game. I don't quite know why it's starting so late. Duke and Northwestern. First off, if you are with us on Dub Club and you see the total projection, the model, likes the over here. There's no weather, at least yet. There's weather in the NFL model. There's not weather yet in the college model. That's something I'm looking at adding at some point. It's part of the reason why we talk about the recommended totals, because we can look at the weather ourselves. This far in advance, it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen with the weather. It's usually decent weather in September. It's more October, really November, that becomes a big concern. But folks, if you saw last week, and we talked about it last week, Northwestern playing literally on the lake. I mean, it's right there. It's kind of a fun view. The winds could be crazy. I don't know. Again, we're too far out to really know, but like, there's a possibility. And I think that total is the books are baking that in, and the model's not. So I think that's one of those where I'm completely ignoring the total suggestion that the model's giving us and saying, look, it's not part of the weather. Anytime you're playing on a lake, you got to be thinking about the weather. That aside, talking about who's going to win this game, this is what we talked about previously, one of those wrong team favored games. Sideline thinks that Duke should be favored. And Northwestern's favored. We're going to take Duke on the money line, plus 128. Sideline says they win 62% of the time. I don't really know what to say about this game. Both of these teams are better on defense than offense. Sideline thinks Duke's got the slightly better offense, slightly better defense. I don't know. It just seems like it's the poor man's version maybe of A&M Notre Dame, right? Where it's both teams are good on defense. I don't really know what's going to happen. So, you give me plus odds, let's do it. That's kind of my take. What's your take on it, Cousin Jared?
I agree with everything you said. As far as the side goes, exactly. Love getting, a toss-up game, getting plus odds here with Duke. The other thing is Malik Murphy. I like what we saw from him in a small sample size with Texas last year, but like what he saw, I think that he has a lot of potential there. And if Duke can just harness a little bit of that against going up against this Northwestern team that I think is not to take anything away from Miami of Ohio, but a Northwestern team that might struggle a little bit offensively this year. I think that is a good recipe for Duke. So definitely, I mean, any type of plus odds you can get on Duke here, I think is great. I do want to mention about the total. You kind of, give some caveats there with the weather. This is kind of like the Wrigley Field of college football. And so make sure you're looking at the weather there before you make any play. But with that said, if there is not some type of significant weather come when this game is played, the total right now is 38.5. And for me, if you get a total down in the 30s, anywhere in the 30s, you've got to either have like some truly putrid offense. You have to have some, maybe some really, really, really good defense.
It's Iowa and Nebraska from last year.
Yes.
Or Iowa always, I should just say.
Iowa always. I think like Minnesota game at home in November. Like, you got to have like a mix of these different things. Yeah. And in my opinion, you do not have those things in this game. Are both offenses maybe a little subpar? Yes, but they're not terrible. I could go and list 20 other offenses that are worse than these offenses. The defenses are, solid, but not spectacular. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, where I'm going with this is I think the over is not a bad play either. If you can kind of validate that we're not expecting anything crazy with the weather. You don't have exceptional defenses. You don't have terrible offenses. It's not an academy game. These teams aren't running the triple option or anything. Mm-hmm. So I think this total is just a little bit low as well if there's not any weather comes.
Yeah, like I said, I think the books are baking in. There's going to be some weather that we haven't accounted for yet. But yes, check the weather if there's not. I assume the total will creep up. Folks, so of course, your key numbers here, 37, 38, 41 are kind of your key numbers that you're kind of looking at. But it's a situation where I look at these teams and I think, yes, both defenses are better than the offenses. But if you're basing your total off of what happened last week with Northwestern and Miami of Ohio, we rode those Miami of Ohio unders hard because they were an extreme difference. And just always unders. We've done that for the last couple of years. We've had a lot of success with it. And I think the under said more about Miami of Ohio, a little bit of the weather, of course, than Northwestern. I'm not saying Northwestern won't be a low scoring team, but I think you just put them in the perfect situation with a team like a Miami of Ohio who loves to play under, where Duke. Right. I'm not sure that's going to be the case for them at least. And so I'm like you. It's like it's a low total if the weather isn't an issue. If it is, of course, that's going to be a little bit of a concern. As always, though, folks, make sure you're shopping around, especially around those key numbers. We'll try to talk about them. If you're curious and want to ask us over on Discord, do so. Make sure you know what your key numbers are. Sometimes we'll say it doesn't matter that half a point. Sometimes it will, a full point, etc. Find the best odds. You can make more money easily just by making sure you have a few extra sportsbooks accounts. If you don't have an account there yet at BetUS, you get 125% bonus on your first ever 3 deposits up to $2,000. Check out BetUS today. Link in the show description.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Saturday at noon, Georgia Tech and Syracuse. Georgia Tech model loved them laying the points last week. They covered. Model of the under. We love the under too. We got that winner. So pretty good week for us with Georgia Tech here. Syracuse, model thinks this is going to be a relatively close game. The books do too. We're going to go under 61. The model's projecting 54.1. I look at this and I watch what Georgia Tech did these first 2 games, and I really just think they are trying to slow things down. They are not in a hurry. And I just think the books haven't caught up to the pace. We got the under last week. I think let's try it again. I think it's kind of that simple. What do you think, Cousin Jared?
I tend to agree with that. I think a lot of this is pace. I think the other thing is, especially watching more of Florida State, it is possible that we were giving too much credit to Georgia Tech for what they did against Florida State's defense. And so I think that sideline is correct in being a little bit judicious in how it is adjusting for Georgia Tech, whereas, obviously in your mind, you want to just go, oh, hey, they kind of ran it up and down against Florida State a couple of weeks ago. That means their offense is good. Well, not so fast. So I like kind of what I'm seeing from the sideline there. The other thing is, and I hate to, not to throw any individual player under the bus, Kyle McCord, quarterback for Syracuse. Obviously, I think they should be excited getting a transfer in from Ohio State for Syracuse, a coup for sure. At the same time, there was probably a reason he was looking at transferring. It probably was, they didn't think he was necessarily the future at Ohio State. And so I would say don't be hesitant because you have a former Ohio State quarterback, playing for Syracuse. There's probably a reason that he is the quarterback for Syracuse now. So I know personally I can get hung up on things like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, Kyle McCord played in all these big games last year. Well, it's, if he would still beat Ohio State if they still wanted him there. Yeah. And so don't be deterred by that is what I would say.
That's a great point. And yeah, Boston College, having that, 20 play touchdown drive or whatever it was in the first half. That's the only thing that we don't have data input in the model yet. That one is going to be one that is going to affect things. So when I run the update in the middle of the week, I am curious to see, it's probably going to ding Georgia Tech's offense a little bit more, kind of, again, trying to adjust for everything. Those adjustments will get smaller and smaller as the season goes along. But early on, it's going to see what happened here, and it's going to say, oh, wow, Georgia Tech offense maybe not quite as impressive as we thought. And of course, with McCord, and we see this every year. I don't know if we said it last week. So of course, just as a general disclaimer, right? We don't ever, we're not trying to trash talk any player. We think these are all really good athletes. They're all much better athletes than us. This is simply just trying to say, hey, we're just here comparing them to other people. And unfortunately for some of them are better and some of them are worse, right? And that's all we're saying. And right, like you said, nothing against Kyle McCord. It's just, if he wasn't judged by Ohio State, or really, I think their fan base to be a guy who could lead them to the promised land, be a top tier Big Ten quarterback. And the model kind of shows that too. He's not bad, but it's not like he is of that caliber. He didn't quite pan out there. And so a great opportunity at Syracuse, facing some weaker defenses to shine and have a great experience there and succeed at Syracuse. But success at Syracuse looks different than success at Ohio State. And that's kind of, I think, what you're trying to say is, we have to calibrate that expectations. Is he might be a successful quarterback for Syracuse, but don't get into your head, this is an Ohio State quarterback, because there's a reason why he's not there now. And so, we're going to go with the under here. Just a few too many points, we think. So under 61, A grade. So far, 3 A grade picks in the model. Most of the picks we have will be A grades today. We only have a few Bs, just like last week. Akron and Rutgers, folks, don't watch this game. I don't know. This is going to be some ugly football. Rutgers started a little bit slow last week against Howard. We're going to lay the 23 with them. Cousin Jared, I'm curious your take on this, but my take on this really is I went back and looked. I didn't watch any of that game. There were other things happening. But I looked at the box score. They still had their first string quarterback in the fourth quarter, 7 touchdown passes. I think Rutgers, I'm not saying they're trying to run up the score. I think they know they had offensive issues last year. They started off that last game with offensive issues. I think they're trying to get their guys reps. They know that they're going to need to improve their offense if they want to, make a bowl game. And Sideline has them at number 33 right now. I think this is a very talented team on the defensive end, and they've got an okay quarterback now. The guy coming from Minnesota, I believe, and he's not great, but Rutgers' offense hasn't been very good, and so they've got to get that offense going if they want to be able to hang in there. And they're obviously not going to compete with the Ohio States of the world, the Oregons, we would think, but can they at least hang in there and have a successful season? They need those reps. I think they're going to play hard the whole time, and so we're going to lay the 23 with them. I think they're either going to get out early and they can rest the starters because they're up 40, or if they're not, those guys are going to be in there. I think we got a chance for a late front door cover. Model thinks it should be low 30s, not low 20s. Why are you happy to lay it with Rutgers?
So the main reason is Sideline projects the score of this game to be 37-4 on average. Yeah. And that feels about right. 4 points feels about right. And so I think if Rutgers gets to
probably more like 38-3, but whatever.
Yeah. I feel like we have a very good chance at covering this game if Rutgers gets to, I don't know, let's say 28 or 31 points, some 34 points, something like that. I think that they are going to be able to dominate the time of possession. I think they're going to be able to run the ball down the throat. That's what Rutgers likes to do. They like to run the ball, and I think that that's just going to wear on Akron. And I think that Rutgers is going to be able to score just as much in the second half if they want to as they will in the first half. So this is just one of those things for me. It's more, I think that Akron, if you want to look at Akron team total, maybe if it's like 6.5, that's not crazy. If you get it to be like 7 or 7.5, I'd say, hey, maybe not a bad play there. But this is just mostly, I think Rutgers is an improved team this year. How is that going to translate to the Big Ten? I don't know. But I don't think Akron's going to score very many points at all in this game.
My hunch looking at this is it's probably going to be the 7.5 to 9.5 range. I was surprised Akron got to 6 against Ohio State. I think that was a little bit of a fluke. I don't think if they play that game 10 times, I'm not sure how many times they get 6 or more. I think they're mostly getting 0s and 3s. Mm-hmm. I think the same kind of thing here with Rutgers. Obviously, Ohio State's defense is better than Rutgers. Rutgers still has a very good defense, and Akron's offense is pretty bad. And so I think there's a very good chance, like you said, like Akron can get shut out and have less points. And people are going to be like, oh, how did they score? Random variation, like weird things happen. Like when you go out there, like people can make 1 play or 2 plays or whatever and get yourself into a situation to score. They might score 10, but I'm kind of like 10 seems like kind of the max at this point, which means we got to 30, 34, 35. We're probably good. And if they don't even get to that, we still got a really good chance to win this. So we always like having a couple different ways to get to the window. So we're only 23 with Rutgers, A grade pick, also at noon. Army and Florida Atlantic. Again, folks, we are going to cover the big games, even if we don't have a pick on them. But sometimes the money is to be made on the weaker games. This is one of them. As we always like to say, you don't have to watch them to make the monies. We're going to go with Army at plus 150. This is another, according to the model, wrong team favored game. So I think Army wins this 65% of the time, even if it's only 50. We're getting plus 150 with an Army team that the model thinks is better than FAU. I don't really know much about either one of these teams other than I don't know why people think Florida Atlantic is that much better than Army. Army's always a solid team, it seems like. I don't know. What's your take on it, Cousin Jared?
So it's possible that people are looking at the Florida Atlantic result from last week when they played Michigan State fairly close throughout the entire game. But what I would remind you of, go back and look at the offense for Michigan State in that game. And this was a Friday night, so it's not like there were tons of other games on. So I spent way too much time watching the last quarter or two.
Miserable.
Yeah. The freshman quarterback for Michigan State did not play well in that game. I think he only had 100 yards, a couple of turnovers.
No, he's not a freshman. He's the transfer from Oregon State, right? Did he redshirt last year?
He may still be. Yeah, I think he's still.
But he played in his 4 games or whatever last year.
But he just did not play well. Michigan State did nothing to really assert themselves in that game, and Florida Atlantic was just able to hang around. So I guess give them credit for that, but it's not because Florida Atlantic was played well in that game. It was just Michigan State didn't do much at all. And the thing is if you take that, if you kind of wait for the other team to make a mistake to try to capitalize on, or you rely on the other team kind of playing below their potential to hang in the game, Army's not going to do that. Army is going to take it to you for an entire 60 minutes. And if, in my opinion, if Florida Atlantic has one mistake in this game, they're going to be playing catch up the entire time. And, the service academies, especially Army and Air Force, are not the teams that you want to be playing catch up against because they make that very, very difficult. So I think at worst, so let's just say that sideline is too high on Army here.
And to be fair, last week when we said that, we said it about Hawaii, and the model said it should be about a pick'em, and I kind of think pick'em was probably the right number. It was a heck of a lot better than 14. So just to be clear.
Yeah. Even if sideline is way overestimating Army here, you're still getting huge plus odds, and you would almost have to be getting to the point where, sideline can whiff on some teams, but is it going to whiff that much? Is it going to whiff so much where you should pass on plus 150? I do not think so.
tended not to, once we went to the player-based model for sure. There were some bigger misses before that were just things that we didn't really have great ways to handle before when the model was a little bit more simple. The other thing I'll point out, because I'm sure, again, if someone here is looking at Florida Atlantic and laying it with the favorite there, they're screaming at their screen or their phone or their iPad or whatever right now and talking about the Michigan State game. But I just would want to point out Michigan State had over 5 yards per carry on the ground. And that's including quarterback sacks, which are counted as rushing yards in college. Over 5 yards a carry. What do you think a triple option offense is going to do to them? You only have a week to prepare. I know they have one extra day, but that one extra day doesn't mean much. Preparing for the triple option is very, very difficult. That was kind of a big game for Florida Atlantic, playing at Michigan State, playing at a Big Ten school. They were super hyped up for that. That was the game they were ready for all offseason. Now you have to come back here in week 2 and play a triple option. It's just, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a letdown spot because I know Florida Atlantic is going to take every game seriously, but that's a really tough thing to go from. We were geared up for Michigan State, hung in there, played really well, and now this, like, you have to stay super disciplined. Michigan State ran all over them. Army's going to run all over them. And as you mentioned, Michigan State just was one-dimensional. Childs was, pretty miserable. Again, very disappointing. And he's a young guy, and they expect more from him. But only 114 yards on 24 attempts, 2 interceptions, more incomplete passes than complete passes. And, we'll be able to talk about Michigan State another day. But Army can be one-dimensional because that triple option is so hard to stop. And so that's not going to be a problem for them. It just seems like a bad setup. And I don't really know why the odds makers or the betting public or whoever's guiding this these days is not really taking that more into account. I think it's going to be a really tough spot for Florida Atlantic against an Army team that last week, I know it was a weaker opponent, but offensively looked like it was clicking on all cylinders. Last year was clicking on all cylinders up until that LSU game, and then they had some injuries and the wheels just completely fell off. But I think this early season Army team is going to be pretty respectable, not great, but good enough to hang in there. Plus 150, way too good to pass up. You can take the points if that's your thing. We've got a grade pick on Army plus 150. Also, of course, here at noon, big noon Saturday, as always, a big game, bigger this year, it seems like, because the one last week was a fun one. And now this one, Texas and Michigan, no pick on this one officially from us. We did want to cover it and talk about what we would do if we had to. The model would lean taking the 7 with Michigan right now. Texas is a 7-point favorite. I'm really concerned with Michigan's offense. We were concerned with Michigan from the start. We did not have them ranked very high. I think we had them around number 10. Now they're number 12. It was a slow start for them. We had Texas up there at the top. Neither one of these teams' ratings moved much. I think what we saw from Michigan offensively was kind of the fear that they might be able to handle some weaker schools, but they're going to really struggle against a good defense. And last week did not do anything to change the thought that they could struggle against a good defense. This Texas team is really good. We saw it last year. That was not really a fluke. For the first time, I guess we can all agree that Texas is back finally. They last year was a fantastic, dream season for them. And, they were a potentially concussed Quinn Ewers at the end of the game in the semifinal away from playing for a national championship. And, I'm not sure I would take the 7 with Michigan right now. The total set really well, should be right in that 44-45 range. That's where it's at. I mean, key numbers, obviously, if you can, go over or under a key number, you always like to do that. But where's your head on this game, Cousin Jared, if you're giving people a lean as to what to do?
I think this is a well-set line. I have too much respect for Michigan's defense, and I know that I feel like Quinn Ewers has improved, but I know, especially the beginning of last season before that, you and I were kind of leading the charge on, is Quinn Ewers that good? Like, he's not bad, but is he that good? And I think he's definitely answered some of that, but I just have so much respect for what Michigan can do defensively. If I don't think I would play it, but if this got to, I don't know, let's say like 7.5 or something like that, I think if it got to 8, like that's where I would really start thinking about Michigan, just because, like I said, I have so much respect for their defense. I think they'll be able to keep it fairly close.
It's obviously a tough place to play. It should be a really interesting game. I'm like you. I think it's set really well. And I think we're going to cover – we've got a couple picks on bigger games. But I kind of think what you saw, folks, last week and what you're seeing this week is going to be kind of representative. It's the way it goes, where most of the games we talk about are going to be mid-tier games, lower-tier games. And when we cover the big games, we're going to say on a lot of them, we think this is priced pretty well. Why is it priced pretty well? Because everyone's focused on it. There's a lot of money coming in on it. There's already been money coming in on it. So all the movement's already happened. And there's just sometimes not value. So this is kind of more of a, hey, if you're dying to play it because it's a big game and it's fun or whatever, that's fine. But from a strictly how do we make the most money? You don't win more because it's on TV. You don't win more. I guess everything's on TV now. You don't win more because it's, Big Nude Saturday, right? You win the same amount as any other game based off how much you wager and what the odds are. So this is just one where we think it's priced pretty well for now, at least. It's a stay away. It is a good reminder, folks, though. We didn't really have much of a chance last week because week one, the movements always happen half the time in the offseason. So it's just a different world. But now kind of going forward, we have our picks here that we have on show, but we're going to have a handful of picks as the week goes on as line movements. Because you and I were talking earlier, there's a handful of these games, and I'm looking at numbers half a point, a full point away from, hey, if it changes as much, we're pulling the trigger on it. So we'll have multiple updates for people on Dub Club throughout the week of extra picks. So just because we don't have a pick on it today doesn't mean we won't by the end of the week. Maybe we won't. We'll see where the number goes. This one, I don't think we'll be touching either way. I'll be watching, be interested to see if, how Texas does here now in year two of being a top tier program. Quinn Ewers, year two of being a really good quarterback after an up and down year before that, but should be a fantastic game. No pick from us officially. 3:30 Eastern, Jacksonville State at Louisville. Jacksonville State it came out flat, we'll say. We thought they would hang in there with Coastal Carolina to be a more interesting game, at least. Did not really see that coming. Obviously, this point of the season, it's very interesting. You start thinking how much of that was Team A, how much of it was Team B, how much of it was Jacksonville State, how much of it was Coastal. At this point, maybe a little bit of both, but we'll see. Of course, this Louisville team is definitely better. They're favored by a lot. They should be favored by a lot. We aren't going to take a side. Instead, we are going to take the under 58. The model is projecting 51.3. Because Jared, I like this pick for one reason and one reason only. And that was last week. The model had an A grade on the over in that Jacksonville State Coastal Carolina game, which hit by like the middle end of the third quarter. Easy. And now the model says A grade on the under. So sure. I mean, it nailed that last week. And now it's nailing going the other direction. Sure, why not? Let's just do it. I mean, Louisville ain't going to play very fast. I know that much.
Yeah, I did have a little bit of hesitancy at first on this pick. I believe Louisville played, I can see the team now. Austin Peay played Austin Peay on Saturday, and Louisville scored at will in that game. Again, it's Austin Peay. But going back and looking at some things you can see here on your screen, Louisville, not a particularly fast team, and their defense, number 16 in the country, according to Sideline, a little bit surprising. Jacksonville State coming out flat against Coastal. If they do anywhere near the same thing with Louisville, they are going to have a hard time scoring 10 points. I'd expect to see a better effort from Jacksonville State there. But at a number like 58, you're north of all of the key numbers there in the 50s. And so I think this is not only a good play from the perspective of it's what Sideline says, but also statistically, there are so many different spots that this total could fall at, 51, 52, 55, 58, and you would, push or a win and all those other numbers. So I think that this matches what we see on the screen here, and also just in my mind, a smart play. If you look at a distribution of outcomes, there's a lot of ways that you can win with a 58.
Yeah, the average number of points in a college football game last year, also week one, was more like 52. We talk about 55 being, of course, the most key number, but that's really because the key number at the bottom part of the 50s is 51 and 52. It kind of splits there, whereas 55 doesn't really have a dance partner there. I think if this was set at 55, models at 51, I'd be like, that might be a little too high, but I'm not touching it, right? If it's set at 54 and a half, I'd be like, I think that's totally fine, but at 58 just seems a little bit high. I wouldn't be surprised if this comes down just a little bit. I don't see how Jacksonville State scores much with what we saw last week. Their offense just really sputtering. And obviously we talked about they try to go fast. You can see that on screen, number 5 projected pace in the country. But, they didn't go anywhere last week against Coastal, and
especially in the first half, like nothing.
In the first half. And Louisville's backups are going to be better on defense than Jacksonville State's offense at this point. And, it seems like a game where Louisville's just going to, try to rocket to sleep, get out early and then just get the backups in, kill the clock, don't get anybody hurt. Conference games are approaching, sooner than people may think. There's a lot of conference games this week. And, or a lot more than I would expect in week 2. And there's just no urgency to get up into the 60s in this one. So we're going to go under 58, A grade. They're also at 3:30, one of the aforementioned conference games, South Carolina and Kentucky. going to take the 10.5 with South Carolina. Kentucky's favored. They should be favored, but we've got them favored by more like 5. Getting 10 and the hook seems like a lot. I don't really know how this game is going to play out. I know Kentucky's probably the better team and they're at home, but do we really know enough about either one of these teams to have 10.5? Just seems extreme for me. This one just jumped at me. Again, it kind of like we talked about last week. If it's 9.5, I'm like, whatever. But like getting the win on 10 seems like a cherry on top for me in a game that feels like it should be close with how good these defenses are. Because Jared, you're an SEC guy. What's your take on this?
I feel like at this point, I don't know how long that Mark Stoops has been at Kentucky now, probably a lot longer than I think he has been, but they have a very, very strong identity. And you see the defense there rated in 86, one of the better defenses in the country. And my goodness, look at that pace. Number
dead last.
Dead last in pace. Yeah. They want to.
And folks, that is adjusted for. I know they only played 3/4 of a game, so that is adjusted. Accounted for in the model. Don't think I overlooked that. All these teams, the handful of teams that didn't finish their games, we accounted for that. So it's not like it's just thinking that there weren't any plays because they didn't play a whole game. We got that covered in the model, folks.
Yeah, and so they want to slow things down. They want to get into a rock fight, and South Carolina is just one of those pesky teams that they're very, very difficult to blow out. They're going to lose more than a handful of games, unfortunately, this year. It's just the way that the SEC is, but they're going to hang in a lot of games. And I'm just like you, like this feels like a game that Kentucky wins by 4 or 7, or let's just say even 10. And we still cover in all of those different ways. And it's just like Kentucky's not going out there trying to light up the scoreboard and win some kind of beauty contest. They're just trying to have more points than you at the end of the game. That's all they care about. So
some would say that's all that matters.
Yes, it is. It is exactly all that matters, and maybe more than anybody else, Kentucky aligns themselves to that. Because I can't remember every year that Mark Stoops wins 7 games, he gets an extra year added onto his contract, something crazy like that. Yeah, something crazy like that. So again, just it's all about the wins. I just don't see how this. I would be surprised if this one ends up being a 14-point game.
Yeah, and I think there are ways that this doesn't happen, right? Turnovers and special teams and stuff like that. I mean, anything weird can happen, right? And that's why we always talk about like being responsible with your unit size because we don't know what's going to happen in one game. Weird things happen, but the main likely ways this plays out, when you just think about from a game breakdown perspective, if Kentucky is really dominating this game, you expect this to be really low scoring. They are grinding it out, and it's one of those games where it's like they're up 17-10 in the fourth quarter and they're just sitting on the ball. Yep. And we got a great chance to cover 10.5 because there won't be enough points scored that it's likely that we can still lose by 7 or 10 if Kentucky's really dominating, because they're not going to try to get there. You see South Carolina's pace. If South Carolina has their way, scores quick, and this becomes a little bit more of South Carolina's style of game, which is possible, then we're probably going to cover the 10.5 too, because it's a little bit less likely that they're able to go that fast and they're not going anywhere, right? It's not impossible. But it just seems likely that if South Carolina's having success, there might be more points. Okay, they're having success. If they're not, it's probably because this game is ground to a halt, and 10.5 is a lot of points for a game with no pace and nothing happening in it. So it's kind of one of those either way we go. 10.5 makes a lot of sense. 8 grade pick from us. Still at 3:30, Eastern Michigan and Washington. Because Jared, I wonder how many weeks we're going to talk about Eastern Michigan, given they're not very good. This is back-to-back weeks.
Probably more than we think we're going to.
I feel like we talk about them more than we should every year. We nailed that one with UMass. We were like, there's no reason why they should be dogs. Like you mentioned at the top of the show, right? Our bread and butter here with the wrong team favorite game. Washington's favored by a lot. They should be favored by a lot. We're not actually going to touch the spread on this one or the money line. My goodness. But we are going to go over 47. We're projecting more like 52. So that's an A grade pick from us. What caught your eye about this one, Coach Jared?
What caught my eye, this one is it's 47 and not 48. I think 48 is the spot where this would be a no-go for me. But you're looking at a Washington offense with, Jed Fish at the helm now at Washington. I think they did as good as they could with DeBoer leaving. I think Fish was probably the best guy that you could get there. Clearly, like, he had a good offense at Arizona all of his time there. look at what he left in the cupboard for Arizona and what they did to New Mexico last week. Which
wide receiver, holy cow!
Yeah, McMillan is just unbelievable. So I think you don't have to worry about Washington's offense. I think they are going to get theirs. They could potentially get close to 47 themselves. But to your point about Eastern Washington, this team is just perennially Eastern Michigan, is just perennially underrated. And people who think that Eastern Michigan is going to get shut out in this game are mistaken. Eastern Michigan is going to find a way to score some points. And are they going to score 10 points, 14 points, 17 points? I don't know. It's not going to be a lot, but I think they are going to get enough to contribute, on top of what Washington gets, that you're going to be able to go over a number like 47. And again, at 48, that's probably the highest I would play this. When you start getting into the low 50s, and it's kind of like, I think that loses all of its value.
Yeah, at least getting the push at 48 and a half for sure to me is that's where it's like, it's close enough to the projection at that point that you're not getting really any value there, that 51, 52 is possible. But, we really want the winner on 47, 48, 51, 52. That's some real value, but at least the push on 47 is still pretty valuable. There's so many ways that we can win or push here. Because Jared, I don't want this to happen, of course. So unless Washington wins, 52-0, then that's fine. One day though, we will know when we've made it big if Eastern Michigan gets shut out, and then we can take that clip of you and get on Cold Takes Exposed on Twitter or whatever, with you saying Eastern Michigan won't get shut out. That would just be great if it happened, and then we, that would be when we've hit the big time.
But, we can only hope.
We can only hope, but not hope. We don't want them to get shut out. We want some points in this game. We're still at the 3:30 time slot. One of the bigger games of this time slot here, Iowa State and Iowa, folks. Always a fun game. Always a wonky game. Always something weird happening, and it's September storms coming through that way. It seems like Iowa. Get Iowa. We kind of have seen that there. Their pace isn't so much that they're trying to go slow as much as they just aren't good at offense, and they are really good at defense. We've got them overall at number 17. That's how good their defense is. And we were pretty high on Iowa last year, and they made us a lot of money. Iowa kept being underdogs. They kept winning. We kept backing them on plus odds, and they won like 10 games or whatever it was. We were like, this team's got a really good defense, and people were just so stuck on the offense. They couldn't see that the defense was able to. That's why we have a model to help us figure that stuff out. And I don't know, I view Iowa the same way this year that I view last year. They're not getting any respect. Their offense is terrible, just like it was last year. But the defense is going to get them a lot of wins, keep them in a lot of games. It's such an incredible unit. I don't know what else there's to say other than Iowa's undervalued, just like they were last year, I think, in this one. We've got Iowa winning by an average of 9.5. We're going to lay the 2.5 rather than go money line. I'm a little concerned about laying 2.5. I don't like taking the minus odds in college football, so I don't want to take the money line. But Iowa 2 or 1 would be like the most Iowa thing ever. So I'm a tad concerned. We're going to officially lay the 2.5 because in general, laying odds in college football is, generally speaking, not a great idea because college football, and in the long run, it's going to bite you in the butt. And so we're going to 2.5 with Iowa. Because Jared, we haven't really gone through this, who likes what pick or whatever, but I think we both were fans of Iowa in this one. What were you a fan of laying the 2.5 with them? Well,
just get this out of the way. I think Iowa State's going to be a pretty good team this year. So this is definitely more my affinity for Iowa.
To be fair, say that about every Big 12 team. And I think you could say 13 of them probably.
yes, you are exactly correct. But this is nothing.
They're all going to be decent.
This is nothing against Iowa State. And of course, this is more about Iowa. Like you said, was very kind to us last year, made us a lot of money. Their defense is going to be just as amazing this year as it is every other year, I assume. Okay, so the offense. So I don't know what Iowa's offense was rated last year. I could go look and see where Sideline had it end up at. But right now it has it as a 98.
It's pretty optimistic.
Okay. What I will say is Iowa had
it finished last year going into the Michigan game. And I'm going to say real quick, it finished going into the Michigan game at a 90. In a game that the spread was 22 and we said it should only be 17.5, and lo and behold, they lost by 18. So
yeah. Okay. So it's saying that Iowa's offense is a little bit better. I can't believe it was a 90. If you would have told me that Iowa's offense last year was a 71, I would have said sure. It's about on the same level as Akron.
But they played Ohio State and Michigan and Nebraska and all these other really good defenses.
True. What I will say is this past week, and it was against an FCS team. I can't remember exactly who it was right now, but Iowa threw 3 touchdowns to receivers in the second half of the game this past week. That was more touchdowns than they threw to receivers all of last season, and tied the number of touchdowns they threw to receivers 2 years ago in 2022. I'm not ready to say that Iowa's offense is significantly improved, but I'm pretty close to saying it's different enough to be somewhat effective. And I mean, I don't feel like I'm asking for much here, Iowa.
No.
I mean, just if you just have a 95 offense or whatever you have here, a 98 offense, just be slightly below average, you are going to be a fantastic team. Throw those receivers more. It's almost like they're there for that reason. So I think
Cousin Jared throwing shade week 2 already.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, Iowa has been good to us. That's the reason we're riding this train. But I did see some stuff that I like from their offense last week that this sounds so dumb to say, but like a wrinkle of throwing it to wide receivers. I mean, if they can add that to their arsenal.
If there's an Iowa fan watching this, I know they're like, that is a new wrinkle. It's a good point. It's a good word to use.
Yeah. And so it sounds absolutely ridiculous to everybody else, but all the Iowa fans are nodding their heads. Yeah.
Maybe we'll throw it to a punter next. A couple of notes to follow up on. I get it. I totally get what you're saying. Viewer, I get what you're saying. If you're like, there's no way Iowa was a 90 last year. There's no way they're 90 this year. Folks, they won 10 games last year. We kept saying they were undervalued last year. They kept making us money last year. At some point, when are you going to believe? I'm not saying their offense is good. It's just we have to consider the competition you're playing. They were a bad offense last year, but they weren't so bad that the defense couldn't help them. They went 10-2 in the regular season. Like, that's pretty good, and the offense was bad. And this year it might be a little bit better. I think that's why they're up to 98 is like the models like, hey, they actually maybe move the ball a little bit better. Again, I'm not saying their offense is going to break records, but if they're, middle of the pack with that defense, they're going to win 10 games again, probably, pending the schedule. The Big Ten, like we talked about, you could have a very lucky or unlucky schedule. I haven't looked at theirs. Last thing I want to say, we talked about the Big 12. Iowa State is actually right now the 10th rated team in the Big 12. Folks, they're ranked number 40. That means the Big 12 has 10 of the top 40 teams. It's going to be wild in there, and they've got 2 teams in the 50s, so they've got 12 of the top 60 teams. So it's gonna be a fun one at the Big 12 because this Iowa State team is not bad at all, and yet there's 9 teams the model likes ahead of them. But we think Iowa's just too good. Not getting enough respect. Again, they were good to us last year. Hopefully they'll be good to us again this year. UTSA and Texas State. Moving on to the 4 p.m. slot, so right after the 3:30 before we get to the night games. So far, all A-grade picks. Another A-grade pick for us here, over 61.5. We mentioned this before. Your key numbers here in the 60s, kind of split between 61 and 62. So we'd really like this more at 61, but 61.5 is still a reasonable number to go over. The models got it at a nice 69. The pace of these teams, folks, is going to be should be through the roof. It should be a lot of fun. There should be a lot of tempo. We noticed last year with UTSA, like against Western Kentucky, I think it was when I first noticed it, that there weren't a lot of points in the game. And then I think we kind of realized it was Western Kentucky who was the team that was very much like, be careful with Western Kentucky totals, because in the conference games, if you want to go fast, they're going to slow it down. And if they want to go slow, you want to go slow, they're going to speed it up and things like that. UTSA wants to go fast. Texas State wants to go fast. Both these teams are better on offense and defense. I expect a lot of points. Again, over is the play here. What do you have for us here, Because Jared?
I don't have much here aside from just look at the pace. It's not very often that you're going to get 2 teams that both are in the top 10 of pace in the country. And of course, both of these offenses, especially relative to the rest of their competition, very good, especially Texas State. They're number 25 in the country offensively. I think this is just the perfect storm of offense. These are two guys with Texas high school football roots that want to score points, that came up through Texas football playing a certain way, and they've instilled that in their teams. I think this is going to be a really fun game.
Yeah, definitely one of those to watch. As opposed to something we talk about not watching. This would be a fun game. We think both teams are very decent in their respective conferences. Folks, Texas State last week gave up 27 points to Lamar. Lamar's had some decent years, but I mean, they can give up some points. UTSA scored 28 on Kennesaw State, who I haven't seen enough of Kennesaw State, but when you look at some of their FCS stuff, it looked like they wanted to go as slow as cement drying. So there's just a recipe here for a lot of points, two pretty good offenses. Texas State offense might actually be better than last year's, and it was a lot of fun last year. So I'm pretty high on the Texas State team. Don't know who wins. I think it should be a fun contest. There's a reason the spread is close, but we expect a lot of points. It should be more in the upper 60s, we think, than the lower 60s. We're going to go over 61.5. 6 p.m. Eastern, our first B grade pick of the day. Here we're going to go over 50 or under 52. It should be under 52. In a game where we are expecting 48.5 points on average in Central Michigan and FIU. Because, Jared, this is one that you had circled. Why did you circle this game?
Bad offense. Nobody really pushing the pace one way or the other here. I think that you would have to have a good game offensively from both teams for this to get over a number like 52, and I just do not have faith in either of these teams. Central Michigan was one of the worst teams in the MAC last year, which you and I talked not on the show, but before the season started, like how bad was the MAC going to be this year? And Central Michigan was one of the worst teams in the MAC. FIU, they played a little bit better as the season went on last year, but at the same time, like you look at where sideline,
it was a low bar to start with.
It was a very low bar to start with. But you can see even after that improvements, sideline is not really impressed with them offensively or defensively. So this is just for me two bad teams, and I think that you would have to have both of them do something a little bit abnormal to get over a number like 52. So I always like a good under, especially when it's two very below average teams.
How much of this is about the key number here of we talked about earlier, 51, 52 being key numbers, the fact that you're under 52 versus how would your thoughts change? Obviously 52.5 we're thrilled with as well, but what if this number drops and it's 51, 51.5, 50.5? How do your thoughts change on it? Because I know part of it is you're on the right side of some key numbers there.
Yeah, if it's 51.5, I'm still good with it. I could get behind going under 51.5. 51's where I start questioning it. I really like to win at 51 and not not have a push there. If this gets 50.5, I'm out. Too close at that point. Again, I like just playing the numbers here with where the games usually land. So definitely 51 is the lowest I would go in playing this one.
All right, good to know. 7 p.m. Eastern, Alabama and South Florida. Because I thought this was an interesting one because this is a revenge game, I guess, for Alabama.
Yes.
The last time I believe they played at South Florida was a close contest, a scary contest, in a monsoon, had a delay in it, and Alabama almost lost. Now, the return trip, South Florida, pretty good here, pretty average, which is, quite an improvement for them given where, they've been up and down for a while, but a respectable team for them this year after maybe some more down seasons here. I feel like recently rated a nice 69. Alabama, of course, in the top 5 still, even without Nick Saban, who, by the way, makes maybe an interesting watch of game day. I feel like game day got a little played out, but he's fantastic. South Florida wants to push the pace. Alabama doesn't seem to want to, but again, in Alabama, you assume Alabama will be able to control this game. We've got them winning by an average of 35. We're going to lay the 31 with them. A-grade pick. Cousin Jared, what jumped out to you about this one?
It is a revenge game.
Weird to say about the team who won, but
come on. If there is one thing that college football coaches in particular are good at doing, it is finding every single reason for you to have a chip on your shoulder about absolutely everything. And I know that will be one of the things that the Alabama coaching staff is talking about here. One of the things that really sold me on this is, first of all, Kalen DeBoer's offense is just more wide open than what Nick Saban was running. And I know Nick Saban had a lot of good offensive guys come in there. But DeBoer is just on another level. Maybe the best offensive guy that has been there since Lane Kiffin was there in 2016 or whenever that was. So I just think there's another level to Alabama's offense now that's going to allow them to score a lot of points, which obviously helps us cover this number here. But the other thing is I saw either an Alabama fan or somebody on Twitter, I refuse to call it X, on Twitter this past week. And it was like, when Nick Saban here, we just played conservative murder ball. And now we just play murder ball, implying that the conservative aspect is just gone. And I think that you're going to see that in these games where Alabama is playing, vastly inferior competition. I think they're just going to put up points in droves. And surely South Florida is not dumb enough to try to leverage that pace that they have, the second fastest pace in the country. Surely they realize that is not going to bode well for them if they try to do that. But if they do, all the better. That is only going to help us, cover all of those points we got there. So I just feel like any way you cut this, not looking good for South Florida. I think Alabama is going to score a lot. We
saw that with UTEP this week against Nebraska. It made me, sweat bullets heavily under, but where they were just recklessly fast. It was like, I was like, you're outmanned, and they got some injuries. And I basically predicted that. I was like, you're outmanned, you're undermanned, and you're trying to go faster against a team that's going to bully ball you. Like, what are you doing? And it's just going to make things worse. And it did. So we'll see. If South Florida does the same thing, great. If they're smarter, I'm not sure it's going to matter. I do have to point out Lane Kiffin, offensive coordinator from Alabama from 2014 to 2016. You nailed that. So props to you for being.
Well, I knew that because he left before the national championship game, which kind of, sticks out in the memory. So
which national championship game? I feel like Alabama played one every other year.
There you go.
Your memory's better than mine, though.
That's true.
Just leave it at that. Kansas and Illinois, a game that was a Friday night game, I believe, last year, one that had a little bit of intrigue. Similar situation here. Kansas is favored by 5.5. We've got them by 13.6. We're going to lay the 5.5 with Kansas. This just feels like blatant disrespect to me of the Big 12 for the fact that this is not at least 7. I'm not sure why it's not 10. I mean, this Kansas team is really good. Jalen Daniels, folks, is back. He's been fantastic. He's got to stay healthy. But I mean, he looked last week as good as ever, and he's one of the better quarterbacks in the country. If he can continue again to stay healthy, this Kansas defense has gotten better every year with a coach who knows what he's doing. We've been talking about that. A little bit of a fear of losing their offensive coordinator to Penn State. And we saw last week with Penn State offensive help. But again, when you have a head coach who knows what he's doing and runs successful, we talked about it last week, when you have that infrastructure of knowing what you're doing and being able to build a program up, you don't worry about stuff like that because they find guys who are just as good to replace them. And you've seen that with Kansas. I don't think they miss a beat without them. I think they're going to be really good. I've got them as one of the better teams in the Big 12. Got them at number 16 overall. Illinois is not bad, but I'm just not sure how Illinois hangs in this game, really. I think Kansas, pulls away either early or late. This line seems ridiculously low. Cousin Jared, I know you think the same thing. Why do you think it's so low?
I couldn't tell you why it was low. This was the first line that my eyes were drawn to when lines started coming out. The fact that this is below a touchdown, I think, is asinine.
Nice. I
mean,
I don't think you're wrong.
No. I mean, even if you would have told me where is Illinois maybe even with Kansas, I would say, well, okay, maybe defensively they are. Offensively, we know what Kansas has. We know what Illinois has. Big advantage to Kansas there. But even Sideline thinks that Kansas has an advantage defensively here. Like, there is absolutely nothing. And, overall, is Kansas.
And Illinois is going to allow fewer points per game because of the pace, not because the defense is good. And that's the thing that you have to sometimes look beyond points per game because sometimes you're not comparing apples to apples.
Yeah. And so I don't know. You asked the question. I have no idea. This is like the fishy line of the week. And I would say sometimes lines are fishy and there's a reason for that. I don't think there's any reason for this. I think this is just a bad line. And this is one of those things where take advantage of this because these types of edges are not going to last very much longer into the season. This is probably my favorite play of the week.
I love this one too. I think there's a couple of things I want to say about this. First off, last year's game, Kansas was ahead 34-7 late in the third quarter, and then just was like whatever, and coasted to an 11-point win. If they win by 11 here, we're easily covering. If they're 34-7, we're turning it off because it's going to be a blowout. I kind of think 34-7 seems about right again. I don't see what's different with these teams from last year. Like, it was just one game. So I'm not saying that is exactly predictive, but like, I don't see how it's that much different. I think this Kansas offense is just light years ahead of Illinois. The other thing I want to talk about is what you mentioned there, and I want to be clear with our viewers here because we talk about fishy lines, right? I know there's a lot of people out there who will look at this line and say, this line stinks, someone knows something, blah, 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 and they just won't play them. In my opinion, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, right? But the way I view it personally is, if I think a line is fishy and I can come up with a reason as to why there might be some question, some doubt, a weird spot, a weird travel spot, a weird weather situation, a weird something that happened, with a player and saw half the team out at the nightclub the night before, whatever. When you have things like that, where you're like, I can point to a reason where it's like, I don't know what's going on here, then I think you stay away. But if you can't point to a reason, I think I know, we've done studies on this, right? People remember that was a fishy line and it went the way I didn't think it would go. And they don't remember that was a fishy line, but it just played out exactly like I thought. This is a scientific phenomenon that we know exists. And I think that this is just a terrible line. I think Kansas covers more often than not. And that doesn't mean Kansas will cover. It just means that if you're the type of person who's thinking these fishy lines don't work out or whatever, it's a bias that humans have. We all have it. We all have to fight against it. And my thought is, these fishy lines, you win more of them than you lose, especially the ones where you can't come up with a real reason why you should stay away. Doesn't mean this one will win. Doesn't mean put all your money on this one. It just means play all of them, and you're going to go 55, 60% on them, because sometimes they're just bad lines. You know, take advantage of. We did this with Kansas State, Texas for like a decade straight every year.
That is true.
And we were like 91 or something. We were just every year we were like, this line's stupid, and we just rolled with it, and we won like 9 at the time. And it's like sometimes there's just weird lines, and you just got to roll with it and say, I know weird things happen, but if you can't point to a reason, there's nothing here, no reason why this Kansas team's really good. You get just a slap in the face, just an asinine that it's not 7, 7.5, 10. I don't quite get it. 5.5. A grade play from us. Also at 7 p.m. San Jose State and Air Force, an early Mountain West game. I'm really intrigued by this. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to have eyes on it because there's a lot happening here at the night slot. But you have an Air Force team who was 2 different teams last year, both Air Force and Army. 2 different teams from middle late of the season on. Injuries, maybe lack of depth wearing on them. But Air Force early on was just a machine. San Jose State obviously losing their head coach, losing their quarterback, losing a lot, and maybe reverting back to a weaker version after a couple of pretty promising years for them that they're not used to historically. This total is set at 45.5. Key number there, both 44 and 45 are key. We're going to go under 45.5. Average projected 43. B grade pick, the second B grade pick that we're going to give today. The pace of this game, Air Force as an academy, we know is not going to be pushing the pace. Their defense, is the strongest unit on the field. San Jose State doesn't look like they're going to push the pace either. This is a new coach, a new team, very different from last year. And so we just don't think there's going to be a lot of tempo in this one. Air Force, having one of those trademark, 16 play, 90-yard drives that takes up a whole quarter. They're going to score some points, but we don't think, we think the clock's going to run. Basically, we feel like a running clock kind of game. So we're going to go under, again, the key number of 45.5. Cousin Jared, you like the unders well. I think our main thought here, again, it has to do with key numbers, that we're not playing this under 43.5. At 44, 45, at that point, it gets a little bit dicey. But 45.5, we're getting the win on those 2 keys, 44, 45. What do you have for us on this one?
Yep, I definitely you could convince me to play this at 44. Still play under. Okay. I think something here. So the head coach now at San Jose State is Ken Niumatalolo, who has lots of experience playing Air Force and lots of experience defending the triple option. I think outside of one of the other academy teams, this is probably going to be the best. I don't know. You're going to have San Jose State is going to have the best insight in how to defend this and how to know how to be prepared for all of the counters and all of the counters to the counters the Air Force is going to throw out there.
Yep.
I'll be honest with you, I haven't watched any San Jose State football this year. I know that San Jose State is not going to be running the pure triple option, but you would think that with Nima Lolo there, they're going to run some variation of a run heavier offense, you would think. And so I think that's going to help with, you already mentioned the pace. I think it's going to keep the clock running. I just see the clock. We had that Georgia Tech Florida State game and it had 12 possessions or whatever it is. If you came back and told me that this game had 12 or 13 possessions, I would not be shocked at all. So for me, this is just about, I think San Jose State is going to be able to limit what Air Force does. I think the same thing for Air Force and San Jose State, just because San Jose State, not that great offensively. And I think no matter how you slice it, I think this is going to be a fairly low scoring game.
I was trying to find it here, but I just wasn't quick enough to find the percentage of rush plays, at least so far, for San Jose State, because again, they obviously talked about not running the triple option there, but they're still. I guess they only played one FCS game, so it's gonna be hard to find that. But I do think, at least with the projection for the models pulling in, is it's just not expecting very fast pace. I guess is all we can really say. This we'll learn a little bit more, but like you said, if nothing else, San Jose State, their defense might punch a class above because of that prep, and that could help again slow things down. Really, the biggest thing that we need for this under, in my opinion, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but the biggest thing I think we need for this under is that San Jose State defense to step up, be a little bit more prepared, and slow down the Air Force offense, because what we really need is we need 4-yard runs and not 7-yard runs. And that's the thing that can happen sometimes against a triple option. If you're not prepared, if you weren't able to focus in practice, if you're not the right athletes, if you just couldn't figure it out, when that triple option gets going and they end up with 7, 8, 9 yards a pop, they can score in about 6 minutes, and they're scoring touchdowns, because once you get close, it's like then you really can't do anything because they can just keep running it because you're tired. If they can just slow them down to get 3 and 4 yard carries where it makes them where they score, but after 16, 17 plays, that's going to grind out so much time, and that's where the points are starting to happen. So I think that aspect, I think, is, to me at least, the driving force here, along with, again, the key number here, 43.5, very different story than 45.5. We're going to get the win on 44 and 45. Be great under. And then we'll go over here in the next one, UAB and UL Monroe over 55.5. Cousin Jared, this one must be a strong one for you to go over a key number without the hook. This is not 54.5. This is not 55. You're going over 55.5. Now, folks, of course, shop around. If you could find a 55, even better. But we're projecting 63.5. Why are you just throwing caution to the wind and saying key number? I'm going to, whatever, I have to bleep myself out. Screw the key number, because we're still going over. What made you do that?
So the pace of both of these teams, and more specifically UAB, like this is just in UAB's wheelhouse. They want to go as fast as possible, and especially relative to the rest of their competition, they actually have a pretty decent offense. The number 67 offense in the country going up against the number 125 defense for UL Monroe. UAB is going to score a lot of points. But the problem is they can go as fast as they want, but UAB's defense is just as bad. And so I think UL Monroe is going to find a way to score points too. This is one of those things, just no matter how you slice it, I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. Both teams want to go fast. Both teams have bad defenses. UAB's offense is just on another level. I don't think you're going to have the opportunity to play. I don't want to throw a number out there, but there may only be 1 or 2 other UAB totals the entire season that are in the 50s. I think the rest of them are going to be in the 60s. So this is one of those things, like maybe people are saying UL Monroe is really bad, and they would be right. UL Monroe is really bad. But that is not a reason to hang a total in the mid 50s with this UAB team. Just go. 58 over, 59 over, 61 over, 62 over. Okay, if it got to 63, okay, fine. All the value's gone there. But this is one of those where I would say right up to 62, I'm good with playing over.
Wow. We're going to now go to our favorite part of the show. Usually, because you do this, but this is going to be now Professor Sides does this, where I read off scores to you from last year. Folks, and I'm not going to read off scores. I'm actually just going to throw numbers at you, because I think this is interesting, and I don't like to do this necessarily, but hang with me, folks. Last year, if you take out the that's in this year, I guess, because they won't play the one game. Take out the FCS games. Take out the Service Academy game of Navy. Right, the total number of points scored in every. I'm going to read every. I'm not going to skip a single one of them. Total number of points scored in every UAB game. Let's see if I can do math here. 84, 62, 70, 58, 91, 61, 66, 83, 58, 83. Folks, not a single one of those was the lowest number was 58. And yeah, UWM was bad, but like they played some bad teams last year too. Like I don't know, I don't. This is very confusing. UWM Monroe, if they have any pace in them whatsoever, this lines up to be a game that might even be up in the 80s and 70s. Like they had a lot of games last year do that. Like UAB's defense might be better. So far, the model is not buying it. Look at that defensive like right there. Like teams score off of them, they score points. It's fun football, but this is little confusing why it's so low. A grade over Forest there. There's two games at 7:30 that I think will have everybody's attention. The first one, Colorado, Nebraska, because Colorado's anything at this point. And, I saw someone on Twitter comment that, Colorado at this point has divided everybody. It's divided the country into people who want them to succeed, think they're super talented and believes in them, and then people who are the haters and don't think they will and whatnot. And, I don't think that's necessarily true. It's divided everybody into those two games, but there are a lot of people in both of those teams. And Nebraska, of course, last week showed off that really incredible defense, had, one lapse really against UTEP where they allowed that quick score in the, whatever it was, late first quarter, early second. Offense has a pulse maybe now. We're going to take Colorado as a B grade pick, taking 7.5 points. Because I saw the statistic. I don't know the exact number, but it was something like the dog in Colorado games with Coach Prime now at the helm is like 10-3 against the spread. North Dakota State covered last week, and I was telling people to take that. That was too many points, especially once it got over double digits. If Colorado's a dog, they hang in. If they're a favorite, they don't win by a bunch, is mostly what happens. And so I take 7.5. Why not? What's your take on it?
Man, this is going to be a crazy game. The atmosphere there is going to be, this is going to be the biggest game that Nebraska has played at home. I know they've had some big conference game, but the biggest non-confererence game they have played there in a while, maybe since Oklahoma a couple of years ago. But that Oklahoma game, nobody really expected Nebraska to hang in.
7.5 point favorites.
This one, I think the game's going to be competitive. What more do we have to see from Colorado? That they are, in my opinion, they are going to make every game exciting. Every game is going to be close.
Except for the Oregon game where they lost by like 50 or whatever it was.
Okay, that's true. Completely different. Well, and that gets to a point I'm going to make here in a second. Every game is going to be close. They're going to be able to put up points with absolutely everybody. Their defense is probably going to struggle against just about every team out there. And so I think that anytime you can get a touchdown or more, either way, to your point, just if it's Colorado getting points, take the points. If it's the opposing team getting points, take the points there. Especially this applies early in the season. The later in the season we get, I feel like I'm a broken record with this, but
we said it a lot last year.
We said it a lot last year, and I do not think anything has changed. I think I saw they had like 40 new scholarship players or something this season. Just the depth. I'm not sure that Colorado has the depth. I think that, maybe the first half of the season, you're going to see very similar things that you saw the first half of the season last year. Take those points. It's always going to be close games. Then when you get in the back half where that depth is being more tested, I think that's where you're going to have to be a little more judicious with what are we going to do with Colorado.
Especially in last year, they had a tougher schedule, but there still was a little bit more cupcakeness in the Pac-12 than the Big 12. Every week, you're never gonna play a team like Oregon, who is that good, but you're gonna play a pretty good team almost every week because there's just so many good teams.
Yep.
No rest.
No, not at all in the Big 12. At some point, I'm gonna have the math figured out in my head where it's like the Big 12 -2 +4 -2 +4, whatever they actually are is how they need to be referred to.
The big question mark.
Yeah. However we got there.
I would say the big X, because we use X in math as a variable, but that doesn't. I don't think that works.
No, I don't. It doesn't just roll off.
I'll keep working on it.
Yeah, that's fine. Anyway, take the 7 points with Colorado. I think this is going to be a close game. And in general, take points in any game Colorado's in until some point in the season, which we will tell you all at that point, hey, maybe stop doing that now.
I feel like we'll cover every Colorado game this season just because everyone wants to hear what people think about it. Yeah.
Very possible.
Tennessee NC State is the other big game at this time slot being played in a racetrack.
They're playing at Bristol? I didn't realize that.
Isn't that the one that they're playing on a racetrack? They're playing it. They're playing a racetrack, and this is they sparked the reason why there's gonna be a baseball game next year on the racetrack. I don't know what that's going to do. Basketball, we talk about how that affects your depth perception. Football, I don't think it's going to affect anything. Like, I don't think it's going to create like a wind tunnel or anything. So I don't think it's going to really change much other than it's just going to be an interesting thing to watch. This is priced pretty well. No pick from us on this one. We've got Tennessee by 8. They're favored by 7.5. That doesn't really do much either way. I think it's priced pretty spot on. The books are hanging a total of 60 and a half. The model's saying more like low 50s. The model would lean under. We're a little less sold on that. I'm a little bit less sold personally. I'm curious your take on this because we haven't talked about this game. I'm a little less sold just because Tennessee, Nico looked really good. We know he was highly regarded and just another good Tennessee quarterback, it seems like. And he looks really good. That offense moves really fast. Tennessee can just put up points in a hurry. I'm just a little bit skeptical of taking it under with Tennessee at this point. I at least want to see them play kind of a real team here and see, do the points come back to earth, or is the model just going to take a week or two to kind of catch up to just how fast Tennessee's going and how good their offense is? Because we know they can put up points. Grayson McCall for NC State, obviously, pretty good quarterback. And so you got two good quarterbacks, so it's hard to go under. I think it's also hard to go under. I know it's a big delta between the line and the projection, but obviously we're just missing out on the two key numbers of 61, 62. If this gets up, and it might get bet up, this kind of reminds me of the LSU USC game where we talked about last week. We said it's going to get bet up. We said 64.5, and we love it. We said it's probably going to get bet up. I think I saw 67s. We were like, it's probably going to get bet up because people are going to be like, points. And we're like, no reason to rush. Just get a better number. It didn't matter.
Right.
But you always want to get a better number just in case, because that 1 or 2% of the time, that can be a big difference maker. Same sort of thing here. This one might be like, at some point, if it gets to 61 and a half, 62 and a half, like, when do you just pull the trigger and just say under, or are we just like, so these quarterbacks are good and this could have a lot of points? Like, where's your head on this, Cousin Jared?
Oh my gosh.
Put me on the spot here. We didn't talk about this at all.
Yeah. So 65 for sure. It's not going to get to 65. But
probably not, but
62 and a half is probably where I would be at, where you could talk me into making a play on the under here. You laid it out perfectly. All of those reasons were exactly why I didn't want to touch this where this number is currently at. And I think that maybe some people would point to NC State last week played Western Carolina, and that game was close in the fourth quarter. NC State had to come back in the second half of that game. But NC State, I think, found something there in the fourth quarter, and they scored like 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, which obviously, you wish that you weren't in the situation where you didn't have to do that against Western Carolina.
Also, but I think massive look-ahead game, a game that you marked up as a win. Tennessee next week in a friggin' football, in a friggin' racetrack, whatever. Like,
yeah.
Their heads were in that.
Yeah. And so I think NC State, they found something there. They turned it on whenever they needed to. I think McCall, if people didn't appreciate it, if he can stay healthy, always something that you have to caveat with Grayson McCall. If he can stay healthy, I really hope that more people get to watch him play because he was really great at Coastal. I think he can be good here as well. So all of those reasons are why I am hesitant to go under this current number. But I just think 62 and a half, that's just such a wide range there. The variance between what was Sidelines projecting and what the actual number is like, you almost got to take that, and that's the whole reason we have Sideline here, right? Is to kind of help us see things. And if it gets to where it's a 10-point delta, I mean, I'm not gonna be able to stop myself. I'm gonna have to play the under.
And we're talking about this on here, folks. So if you're still with us at the hour and 23-minute mark, you're getting this information, free of charge. So Merry Christmas, right? But this is for every other game that we're talking about. this is why we do an update instead of picks, either Friday night or Saturday morning, depending on how life goes for us. We do that kind of last minute type thing to see that movement. And we have Discord in case there's a last minute thing. I could send another Dub Club play push out Saturday. If this gets up there, we'll push that notification out, say, hey guys, this number's hit this mark and we're willing to play it now. We didn't have to do that for LSU USC because we were like, we're just playing it anyway. Yeah. Because we really thought that was just ridiculous. But in this one, I think, it's kind of that like, there's just no rush to do it now. If it goes down, oh well. If it stays there, we can still play it later. If it goes up, at some point, it's going to be a little bit too much. I think it's going to get bet up. I think people are going to be looking at Tennessee and their offense. Because the last thing I want to say about this game, I'm curious your take on this, and this is where we need Jake. Maybe we'll get Jake to talk about it tomorrow when him and I do the NFL show for one. Tennessee's defense, 80 grade, number 14 in the country. I think that's why the model is looking at this, projecting a lower score. It really thinks that NC State's going to struggle offensively. When you look at NC State historically, they've been hyped a lot for so many years. This new quarterback's coming in every year, it seems like, and they're going to compete for the ACC. And most years, they kind of fall flat on their face. The offense doesn't quite do what they need to do. Grayson McCall might be different. Obviously, he's got a great track record of being dominant. I think the model's looking at this saying Tennessee's defense might have some success against an NC State offense. And if you're an NC State fan, you're probably skeptical and pessimistic about your team and probably thinking they will. That's the part that I'm not sure I'm not buying it. I'm just not sure I am buying it. I'm a little bit like, it's hard for me to see that through. What's your take on this Tennessee defense? Because if they really are number 14 in the country, that's where this game's going to have a hard time getting to number 60 or to the 60s.
Yep. What I don't know is what is the interplay between the pace and how good that defense is. To your point, one of the games we talked about earlier, you were like, hey, your defense can be your defense can be not that great, but you mask it by pace and kind of how your offense plays and how they complement each other and everything. For me, without just watching every second of the game, it's like, their defense could be really good, but depending on how they want to do the pace that day, because you see number 40 pace here, like, come on. Tennessee can go a lot faster than that if they want to.
Tennessee's pace is sometimes masked by like when they get up huge, that it's like it's a little bit of a tougher.
Yeah. To your point, you mentioned one game earlier, like, well, they didn't play a full game, exclude this part of it or whatever. Like Tennessee, there are some games where you're like, you really need to probably like exclude the whole second half.
Just do first half.
Because that's all that matters. So there's just a lot of interplay there between the pace and that defensive number, and so it's just I would love to hear Jake's take because he's going to know better than both of us would.
Yeah, and I said that was like one last thing. NC State's pace. Number 104. I don't. If you have anything to say to this, you can. But that's the other thing that I think is interesting. If NC State comes in as saying we want to slow Tennessee down and really wants to grind this game out and turn it into a little bit of a sloppy affair because they don't want to get to Tennessee's pace, that could also keep the points down. The model's looking at that. If Tennessee starts running fast, their defense has a few holes, and NC State gets into a track meet with them, that's where this game might get to 70. And so that's the interesting thing too, is what's the pace of this game going to actually be? Because I'm not sure if NC State's going to go at Tennessee's pace like they want, or if they're going to, we talk about this basketball all the time. Are you going to stay with your pace? Or are you going to get sucked into playing the other team's style? And so that's the other interesting, a lot of interesting things in this one. I think no play from us officially. We lean under, looking for a little bit higher of a number though. Back to official plays, 8 p.m. last game before we get to the 3 after dark picks and A-grade play on App State, getting 17.5. We've got Clemson by 9.3. Cousin Jared, look, we talk from the start of this show that we did in the year of our Lord, I don't even know, 2021, I guess, was our first year. Now this is our fourth year. Every year we've had this debate about Clemson, and I don't know, it seems like we kind of mostly land, and there's been a couple weeks where it's been like, no, that was a great buy low spot for Clemson. And most of those have worked well, but like, this is not a buy low spot for Clemson. Why are you laying 17.5 to Appalachian State with that offense? Can Clemson score 17.5? Obviously the answer is you cannot score 17.5, but can they score 20? Like, I don't know.
Well,
it's high.
Yeah. And the thing is App State is good enough that they're going to score 14, 17, 20 points, I think. And what have we seen from Clemson the past handful of years that makes you think they're going to be able to score enough points to pull away from that? The other thing that I think about is we talk a lot about this in the context of playing a triple option team or something like that. But man, Clemson took a beating in that Georgia game. That's a tough game. Coming back home, which it's not like App State is a normal, smaller conference team.
This isn't your typical buy game.
Yeah, this isn't your typical buy game. So hopefully that has your attention. But I think you're going to be a little bit roughed up if you're Clemson too, and App State is going to have no sympathy for you at all, and that they're definitely going to try to take advantage of that. I mean, at some point, you could go like there's a lot of national discourse about Clemson and, what Dabo needs to do differently. You needs to utilize the transfer portal, blah, 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 all of that stuff.
I heard a lot of talk about them playing Georgia and that they should take a page out of that playbook where it's like maybe they're not going in and getting 25 new guys every year, but they're kind of picking a handful of guys. And that's, you heard a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. And so not even getting into all of that, what have they done at the quarterback position specifically that makes you think they have developed or had the ability to develop a quarterback that consistently put up points? I just don't trust Cade Klubnik, just like I didn't trust DJU before when he was there. So anyway, I just think this is way too many points. What does Sideline say? Sideline said, okay, I would have said 10 and Sideline 9.5. Yeah. So if this is anywhere 11, honestly, I'd play it all the way down to 11. I'd take App State. I just not high on Clemson, and App State's going to be solid. Trust me, as somebody who was at a game that watched App State run down my team's throat and relentlessly, App State's going to be ready to play in this game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And and like we talked about earlier, nothing against Cade Klubnik. It's just when he started playing, and ever since I've said the same thing about him, he's not the answer. He's not a great quarterback. He's not a great college quarterback. And the models consistently put him at pretty just kind of mediocre. And that's what we've seen. There's at some point, like it is as simple as what our eyes tell us. And sometimes we need the numbers to help us, kind of see what our eyes can't tell us. And we can't watch all the games and all these things. But like sometimes it is that simple. We see a lot of Clemson because they're a big team and big games and whatever. But like offensively, they're just, we thought they could do something last week against Georgia. Not that we thought they would win. I think we all kind of thought that wasn't the case, but we thought they could put up a few points. Mm-hmm. We thought, hey, you had all offseason to prep and you're going to find a way to put up points. And here's Georgia's weaknesses. And that showing, again, with the all offseason to prep for your game of the year, basically, really disappointing and really just shows that offense is just going to be stuck in the mud. And they'll score some points on App State for sure. App State's defense is not overly strong, but App State can definitely do some things. And Joey Aguilar was there last year and very good quarterback, a much better quarterback. And so why I'm getting 17.5 points with the better quarterback is also a surprise to me. You don't typically get that. So almost like you said about the UAB game where you're like, we're not going to get many opportunities to go over this low with UAB. We're not going to get the opportunity to take 17.5 points with a team who has by far the better quarterback very many times. And Clemson's defense is much better than App State's, but like that's only one part of the equation. And we're not taking them to win. We're just taking 17.5. Speaking of though, to win, sprinkle on the money line a little bit. Question mark? How are you feeling about that? Just we kind of talked. Yeah, we kind of talked about this last week. I just can't do it. Yeah, I just can't do it that many points. I want to invest everything I can to get all the points there. But again, do as I say, not as I do. Should I have the gumption to do that? Probably. But I'll tell you this much, folks. This is what I did personally last week. We had UNLV money line. I was invested pretty heavily in the UNLV money line. We had Sam Houston in the points. And I put some decent money in the same Houston State money line. I sprinkled on the Hawaii money line, didn't cash that one. But you know what? We made so much on the same Houston money line. I didn't care. I was thrilled either way. So
that is the beauty of it. It's the beauty of it. You don't have to hit many of them.
Yes. And so something to think about. I wouldn't go too heavy on it. This one feels a little more like Hawaii, where it's like, I'm not sure they can really win this, but this has got some value on it. As opposed to St. Houston, where I was like, I really think they've got a chance to win this game. So maybe with just a little sprinkle, at the massive plus odds of nothing else, 17.5 is just crazy. Yep. Speaking of crazy, to the After Dark segment, Oregon laying 18 against Boise State. Sideline says 20.5. We're going to lay the 18. B grade pick. Cousin Jared, I like this one for a lot of reasons. I'm going to give you the number one reason right now. And that number one reason is last year, September 2nd, Washington 56, Boise State 19. I'm going to predict a score of 56-19. I don't see how this is any different than Washington, because this Oregon team this year is as good as Washington was last year. They were as good last year. I know that Washington beat them a couple of times, but they were really similarly good teams. And I don't really see much difference in how that's going to play out. Now, obviously, that was an extreme case. There were some turnovers. I don't really actually think it's going to be quite that bad necessarily, but it would not surprise me. I do not think that Boise State is going to be able to hang with a team that is as talented as Oregon. The other thing that I like about this, I know everyone's talking about Oregon last week. I even pulled that up on, I guess it was Big Ten or whatever it was on at the end. So I was like, what is happening here to Oregon? Folks, we don't want to overreact to that score. When you look down into it, the Oregon success rate was through the roof. Gabriel was like 42 of 45 or something ridiculous. Like, they're fine. That was a fluky game. They're just trying to stay healthy and get through this at this point in that game, because it didn't, they could win. I'm not really, there's nothing in the underlying metrics. There's nothing when you dive into it that you look at that where you're like, here's why there's a problem. And folks, I know we took Florida State this week here, and that did not work out. But we did that based on not because of anything that was going to work out. We were like, hey, this just seems like against the Boston College team that's not very good. This is a really good buy low spot. This is not a buy low spot for Oregon as much as it is. Last week I said about Florida State, I was really concerned about a few things. I'm not concerned about Oregon. So, against my better judgment, we bought low with Florida State. This is not about against my better judgment. Everything looks fine with Oregon. I think there's an overreaction to that. I think this line would be 21.5 if it wasn't for that game last week. I don't know what the look ahead was on this, but I think we're getting some really good value here, because I think model says 20.5. I think it should be 21.5. 21.5, I'm looking at it saying, I don't think it's crazy to sprinkle on it, because I'm thinking about that last year game and thinking that I'm not sure Boise can compete with these athletes. But at 18, I think this is really good value here. Because Jared, I know you were a little more tentative on this one. Have I talked you into Oregon? Have I done a good job?
Yeah. And honestly, I just wanted to hear your take, because do I agree that, look ahead spot for Oregon, all of those different things, sleepy, you're playing
just
Idaho.
Stay healthy.
Yeah. And like
Idaho's actually a pretty good FCS team.
I was going to say, especially there in the Pacific Northwest, like Oregon's looking at this as like, okay, warm up game. Idaho's thinking this is our Super Bowl. So that's, they scored on a trick play and everything there in the game. Maybe even more than Oregon, my thing is Boise State giving up 11 gazillion points to Georgia Southern, which is something that is possible for Georgia Southern to do. They play up tempo. They have a more wide open offense. So the fact that Georgia Southern scored some points, not surprising. That they scored as many points as they did over and over again, that game being so back and forth, was a little surprising. Ashton Genty, the running back for Boise State, had 6 touchdowns last week.
Very good player. We've been talking about him. We talked about him last year, that he was underrated and one of the better running backs. That I think I had him as the top 3 with the guy from Michigan. I'm losing names now.
Corum,
yeah, and one other guy or something. He was up there. People were talking about it. Now people are talking about how he's the best player in college football. I'm like, we were saying last year, like, he's really good.
Yeah. But the running lanes aren't going to be as large against Oregon, and so you kind of gave the reasons there that you like Oregon. My thoughts on why I'm not super high on Boise State. So sure, let's lay the 18 or 18.5 points, whatever it is.
18 even, and we know Dan Lanning knows how to give a pregame speech. We saw that last year against Colorado. So he might have one up his sleeve here about trying to get them motivated, make sure they come out and play. Also note, of course, Idaho. They made the playoffs in the FCS last year. They beat Nevada 33-6, and I'm not saying Nevada was terrible last year, but they thumped them, which I think kind of just shows what we're talking about. That Idaho would slot in to FBS as not the worst team if they were here, right? Obviously, they would be, kind of like a Kennesaw State or somebody who's just, or a Sam Houston State or whatever, or Jacksonville State, one of these teams that's not great, but they're not terrible. So I don't, it was still a bad showing necessarily at the end from Oregon, but when you look again, it was kind of fluky. I don't really think that there's reason to be concerned. Again, like we talked about, that game just being a shootout like that, they can attract me with Oregon. This game's going to be, 65-28 or something ridiculous. Like, it's going to be bonkers. And so we're lay it with Oregon here. B grade pick, 2 more A grades to come in the After Dark slot. Under 58, again, 58, one of your key numbers there in the upper 50s, up under 58 in Liberty. New Mexico State model says 51, so the lower ones. This was one I was a little bit like, do I like it? Do I want to wait for 59? Should we just go with 58? Liberty wants to run the ball, and that takes up some time. Sometimes they run the ball too well and they score too fast because they're such a good running offense. New Mexico State doesn't really want to play with pace. That definitely helps a little bit. But, I was kind of on the fence. I liked the under. I didn't know if we should wait. You were on the under. So what's your reasoning for, yes, let's just do the 58. We don't really care. That's a key number. Don't get greedy.
Yeah, and that's mostly it, because I just don't want to lose the 58. If it got to 59, that would be wonderful. But it's not worth, to me, the risk of losing the 58. So that's why I say jump right now. The reason for this, you kind of mentioned Liberty there, likes to run the ball. New Mexico State may be bad again. I am concerned with Jerry Hill riding off into the sunset again, and Diego Pavia moving on to Vanderbilt. I'm worried that those two guys were really the heart and soul of New Mexico State's team. And when you lose leadership like that, especially at that level, it's just going to be really, really difficult. So for me, I'm worried this game might be like a 41-10 Liberty win. Because I think obviously Liberty's still very good, but I think New Mexico State may take a large drop off, in which, they won. New Mexico State in the year of our Lord 2023 won like 9 or 10 games, something ridiculous. So of course expect a step back, but I'm afraid it's going to be
perennially been in the bottom 10.
Yes. And not only do I think they're going to take a step back in the record, but I think like they are going to take a real step back on the quality of their team. And
they're trending towards. Yeah, they're trending towards the bottom 10 already, down to 117, and it won't take long for them to get back there, like you said, unfortunately. But Jerry Kill did not ride off into the sunset. He's with Vanderbilt. Do you know his official title with Vanderbilt?
Jerry Kill is with Vanderbilt?
He joined Vanderbilt in the offseason. So Kill and Pavia both
special advisor to the head coach or some crap like that.
No, it's better than that. It's chief consultant to the head coach.
Of course, because why not? That's what every head coach needs. Yeah.
Well, I mean, couldn't hurt. What was it? I don't know if y'all heard this. Cristobal hired a time management coach or something to like specifically be on the side. Someone, and I don't remember if it was I would say friend of the show, like he barely knows we exist, but Bill Connolly, of course, who does SP Plus and is a good analyst mine with College Football. I don't know if it was him or not. If so, I want to give him credit. If not, give whoever credit was who talked about this. But somebody made the comment that like. And now we're off to Cristobal, so now we're down a rabbit hole. But you need like 10 attributes to be a good head football coach at the college level. And most of the time they kind of counteract each other a little bit. Like you can't really be good at all of them because the same personality traits that make you good at one kind of make you not good at the other. And that Cristobal kind of is the extreme example of that, where he's like so good at certain things, getting talent, but the things like the time management and some of the other things he's just really weak at. And so it's like, well, and maybe at least hiring someone to help him out with his weaknesses. That's what we tell anybody, any job, right? Do the things you're good at. Hire someone to help you with the things you're bad at. So anyway, like Kill, like you said, was a big part of that, doing great things with New Mexico State, taking them to heights they weren't at before, and now going the other direction. If Liberty just runs all day, it might just be a sleepy at the end of the game, just running at the clock, 45-10 kind of thing, and we can eke in under 58.
Kids, that is what we call a lot of self-awareness there with Cristobal.
Self-awareness is very good. Very good. Yes. Have to applaud it. As much as we've dogged him, applaud that. Very good move.
Yeah.
We got to give credit where credit's due, right? Wrapping us up. Speaking of credit where credit's due, Arizona State looked good against Wyoming, and when we were down in Arizona State, I did make the comment. I said I thought they'd be fine in the future. I thought they'd be okay. I wasn't expecting it this year. Maybe it is this year. Maybe it is. Maybe I could be wrong about that. Model gave him a big jump.
And
one great.
Yeah, and one thing I want to toot our horn on, because and you'll be able to find, I'm sure, plenty of examples of this throughout the year where it comes back to bite us. But that we played Wyoming on the money line and lost less money there because that one was not close. Wouldn't have mattered if we had taken the touchdown or 6 or whatever it was. So we lost less money there, and that is sometimes just as much a win.
And folks, we're at the hour 43 mark, so if you're still here, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but it is a good reminder. We talked about this last year in bowl season at the start when there were some weird results, right? Like you could have had Wyoming plus, 40 and still lost. And that doesn't mean that Wyoming plus 40 wouldn't have been a good pick. So remember that. Like, don't get too outcome driven on this, because if you had been able to get Wyoming plus 40 at minus 110, we would have all been like, yes, max wager. Like, that's would have been a no brainer. And yet it would have lost, or plus whatever it was. I don't know, whatever number they got destroyed by. Sometimes we said we can't predict one game. Weird things are going to happen in one game. All that to say, I'm going to try to come back around here. Arizona State played well. The model bumped them up. How much of that was once Wyoming got down, they were not built to handle that game. We talked about it on the show. They want to grind the game out, make it ugly, weird turnovers, that sort of thing. They gave up a pick six on like the first play of the game. Mm-hmm. They got down really fast, really quick, and they just couldn't do anything at that point. And I don't want to take too much away from Arizona State. Again, it was a very impressive performance. I need them to show it to me again. If they win this game, hey, it'll be a different story. But we've still got Mississippi State winning this 61% of the time, and Arizona State's favored. And the books are treating this like Arizona State is the better team on a neutral field. And I just cannot get there, at least right now. I mean, the caliber between the SEC, and we're still going to call them the Pac-12 because these players are kind of Pac-12 right now. It'll take a couple of years, right? And this is still Pac-12 caliber. I mean, it's very different. Arizona State's one of the weaker teams from the Pac-12, even one of the weaker teams in the Big 12. Mississippi State's a middle of the pack team in the SEC. Like, there's a big difference. Mississippi State had a down year last year. The interim coach thing with the unfortunate timing of the passing of Leach was just all of that. Now they've got a new coach moving forward in a different direction. Blake Shapen, as a Baylor alum myself, was the whole reason they were competitive for the last couple of years, really. He was that whole offense. And you saw when he went down how bad things were. And thankfully, I think the Baylor's revamped and things are moving in the right direction. But he was the whole offense. And he's a very solid quarterback. I think this is anything can happen type game. We're going to take Mississippi State plus 220. We're going to try money line against Arizona State again. And hey, like we said, we don't have to hit all of them. You just hit a few of these plus 220s and it'll work out for you. But I mean, another wrong team favor type game. We were dead wrong with it last week with Arizona State. But I just think this is a different situation. We've bumped Arizona State up, but the model has just based off the data. But this Mississippi State team, I think, is respectable enough that plus 220 is just crazy to me. Cousin Jared, what's your take?
I agree with everything you said. On one hand, I am very appreciative that I feel like the public is overreacting to a big win against Wyoming, because I do think that Wyoming is a team generally each year that doesn't get enough respect. So I'm glad to see that people are putting some respect on Wyoming. Yeah. But it is a sample size of one that had an outcome that was way on one end of the distribution of potential outcomes of that game. Let's roll back. Is Arizona State maybe a little bit better than we thought? Yes. Are they 40-something points better than Wyoming? Absolutely not.
Right.
And the cover
it didn't matter what you thought last week. It's still in the tail of the distribution. It doesn't matter where you put the mean.
Yes.
It's still in the tail.
Yes. And Mississippi State, the athletes at Mississippi State, still going to be good enough to keep them in a game like this with Arizona State, I think. So, this is just crazy. I can't believe that we're getting such big plus odds here. I mean, this may be like one of the largest discrepancies I've ever seen between what sideline has and what the line actually is.
Yeah, this is like you said, pretty extreme. The new coach for Mississippi State, Jeff Lebby. If you know anything about Baylor athletics, a little bit of a controversial hire at some points, given when he's married to Art Briles' daughter, and when he was at Oklahoma, bringing Briles onto the field. Certain things have taken a lot of heat for that, and we're not here to talk about that stuff as much as it is to say, while there have been some issues with potentially with the off the field stuff, and what is appropriate and where, what he should have done and what he shouldn't have done, et cetera. On the field, he's had great results, and that's really where we are now. And hopefully for him, he can make sure to keep all that aside and take whatever the appropriate actions are. And I'm not saying he was involved in anything, of course, at Baylor, just because he was married to the coach's daughter. But there was a lot of fallout from the coaches who were part of that and who were assistants and whatnot. And that's still obviously a big thing on a lot of people's minds. And that's, again, for whatever good or bad these type of things are aside from what's going to happen on this football game. And that's all we're here to talk about and care about is how many points and who's going to win, right? Or what the probabilities that he's going to win. And his on the field record has been pretty good. And that's why he's risen through the coaching ranks and why, he's been still successful despite some of these distractions, to say the least, that I can possibly say about it, because he's had these good results. And the model is looking at, the players that Mississippi State's brought in, and of course his pedigree as an offensive mind, and saying this Mississippi State team's going to be pretty decent. And if Arizona State wins this game, it's going to be wins a game that's not fluky, wins a game that's not just a bunch of turnovers, wins a game that's not just whatever one team converting all their fourth downs or fluky stuff, right? They actually just go and are the better team in this one. It'll be real interesting to see. Is that more of a like, oh, wow, Arizona State actually is like a top 60, top 50 type team? Or is this about Mississippi State is actually just a lot worse? And what we saw, last year or whatever is more real from them. And that'll be real interesting to figure out. But the model's looking at it saying there's a big talent discrepancy here. And that Mississippi State should, win more times than not. And so, plus 220 is quite the price. Like I said, quite a difference between what the model says. Again, we have a bunch of specials over here on Dub Club. Trials for all the packages open up for everybody. Longer duration packages get some steep discounts. Also, the football only package, promo code football, gets you $99 for your first year. Because Jared, what do we have to say as parting words before people venture into the waters for Week 2 college football?
I would say make sure that you join here. We alluded to it, but we'll update lines every so often, maybe before the early, the midweek games. And then, of course, before the games start on Saturday. So any key line moves, those will get updated. If any picks come of that, you will know that. And then, of course, join us over on Discord. Got any questions, you can ask away. We've got a great community there that can also provide some input. And then, sometimes these numbers are fleeting. So if somebody sees a number that's real valuable, they'll throw it in there. You may only have a short amount of time to get it. So this more than pays for itself. And the trials are great. So you can kind of get a taste of what it's like.
And the WNBA picks, I know that's kind of still a thing. It's kind of faded in the background a little bit, but recently had a 5-0 day on the Discord WNBA picks that we got some people there who really watch that and know that. And they've been doing really well all season. That's just the 5-0 day was just a one highlight, but we've been talking about they've been doing great there. So there's just a lot of ways that a great community of our Discord, fantastic group of people. I'm not part of many Discords, so I can't really compare other than just say I'm so thrilled with the community we have over there. And so a lot of reasons to check out Dub Club. All those specials, a lot of ways you can make it cheaper if you want to. And again, if you want just the football, we have that now for you that we didn't have before. So again, check that out. Otherwise, though, as always, we thank you for watching. We wish you the best of luck and remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.